do know that one of our witnesses has to leave after making an opening statement. So we've flipped our agenda as to how we would usually do things. Usually we would start with our private meeting and go into a public hearing. But given the travel obligations of one of our key witnesses, we've decided to flip today's meeting. So agenda item number 1 of the public hearing on the Joint Standing Committee on Treaties for its inquiry into the Nauru Australia Treaty. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I also extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. In accordance with the committee's resolution of 31 July 2025, this hearing will be broadcast and proof and official transcripts of the proceedings will be published on the Parliament's website. I remind all members of the media of the need for fair and accurate reporting of the proceedings of the committee. I now welcome representatives of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to give evidence today. For the Hansard record, would you please all state your full name and the capacity in which you are appearing before the committee?
Alexandra Perry, Assistant Director and Treaties Manager, DFAT.
Andrew Cumpston, Assistant Secretary for Economics and Trade in the Office of the Pacific.
Good morning, committee members. Jeff Roach, I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Pacific Partnerships Branch in the Office of the Pacific, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
Good morning, members. Mark Tattersall, First Assistant Secretary, Polynesia, Micronesia and Development Division in the Office of the Pacific.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standings as the proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded in Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. It is the responsibility of witnesses to record any questions on notice that are taken. I'd now like to invite representatives here to make an opening statement before we proceed to questions and discussion. Would you like to make one? Great.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I'd like to begin by apologising for not being able to be there in person. I'm in transit to Nandi at present and we'll have to board a flight very shortly after this hearing. But thank you for the opportunity to come before the committee to speak on the Nauru Australia Treaty. The proposed treaty was signed by Prime Minister Albanese and the President of Nauru, His Excellency the Honourable David Adiang MP, on 9 December 2024 at Parliament House in Canberra. The proposed treaty was ratified by the Nauruan Parliament on 28 February 2025. The proposed treaty was developed following a request from the Government of Nauru to the Government of Australia to elevate our long-standing bilateral relationship and reflecting Australia's status as Nauru's largest development, security and economic partner, the Government was pleased to respond to this request. The proposed treaty recognises that Nauru faces unique and ongoing challenges to its economic security. It is designed to support Nauru's economic security and resilience while protecting and promoting our collective security and sovereignty. It elevates our bilateral relationship to an integrated economic, social and security partnership. The proposed treaty comprises 3 core components. First, Australia and Nauru commit to work together to support Nauru's economic resilience, fiscal stability and prosperity. As part of this, Australia is providing $100 million in direct budget support over 5 years to strengthen Nauru's economic security and resilience. This funding will provide Nauru's government with fiscal certainty to invest in the country's future. Under the treaty, Nauru shall ensure transparency and accountability over funding provided by Australia and uplift its fiscal and financial management systems to prevent fraud, corruption and misconduct. Second, Australia shall support Nauru to sustain the existing level of banking services and access to the international financial system. To support sustainable banking services, Nauru commits to strengthen its enforcement of and compliance with its financial regulatory framework. Third, the treaty also reflects our shared commitment to Pacific-led security, recognising that the security of one of us affects the security of both countries. Australia is investing $40 million over 5 years to enhance Nauru's policing and security through support for recruitment, training and infrastructure. Under the treaty, Nauru will prioritise consultation with Australia on security-related challenges, concerns or requests. The treaty provides that Nauru and Australia will jointly agree to any partnership, arrangement or engagement by any other state or entity on matters relating to Nauru's security, including maritime security, defence, policing, border protection and cybersecurity sectors, and Nauru's critical infrastructure concerning banking and telecommunications. Nauru shall also consult with Australia on any partnership, arrangement or engagement with any other state or entity relating to Nauru's other critical infrastructure such as ports, aviation and energy infrastructure. Under the treaty, none of Nauru's critical infrastructure will be used by a third party for security purposes. In the 9 months since the proposed treaty was signed, Australia and Nauru have engaged closely, and I'm pleased to report to the committee that there has been substantial progress against all 3 lines of effort I've just referred to. Assistant Minister for Pacific Island Affairs, Senator the Honourable Nita Green, visited Nauru last week for the formal launch on 18 August of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia's new agency in Nauru. CBA's launch guarantees Nauru's ongoing access to a physical banking presence and access to the international financial system. And we've conveyed an offer to continue to support Nauru with regulatory uplift to accompany CBA's arrival in country. To support Nauru's economic resilience and long-term sustainability, budget support payments totalling $40 million have been paid into the Intergenerational Trust Fund for the people of the Republic of Nauru. And these funds will assist Nauru's government to plan for and invest in the country's future. With whole of government colleagues, we've undertaken a scoping mission to Nauru on our policing and security uplift, and work has begun to support Nauru to draft its first national security strategy. This work, led by Nauru, is a clear demonstration of how the proposed treaty is supporting Nauru to strengthen its security capabilities and sovereign decision-making. Officials, including myself, have increased our tempo of engagement with Nauru and have met frequently with our Nauruan counterparts to shape implementation of the proposed treaty. We've held multiple joint committee meetings to discuss areas that may fall under Article 5 of the treaty, requiring joint consultation or mutual agreement between Australia and Nauru. And I'm pleased to advise the committee that both parties are acting consistently with the spirit of the proposed treaty before it enters into force. The proposed treaty is a landmark agreement in Australia's approach to the Pacific. It marks a new milestone in forging a common, prosperous and peaceful future for Australia and the Pacific region, delivering Pacific-led solutions to our future challenges. Geography entwines Australia's and Nauru's past as shared custodians of the Pacific and committed partners in shaping the region's future. The proposed treaty is a balanced agreement that meets the needs of both countries, Nauru's economic resilience and our shared interest in backing Pacific-led security solutions. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you for that opening statement. Before we proceed to questions, I just thought it's a good time to pause and recognise the committee members that are here. This is actually the first hearing of our committee for this Parliament, and acknowledge the presence of Senator Collins, who's joined us, who's shown an interest in this area, not a formal member of the committee, but very interested in this topic. So welcome, Senator, and thank you for joining us. But if we might start with the Deputy Chair, just to introduce herself to the committee, just so you've got an idea of who's around the table.
Zoe McKenzie, member for Flinders.
Jo Brisky, member for Maribyrnong.
Tanya Lawrence, the federal member for Hasluck from Western Australia. Senator Varun Ghosh, Western Australia.
And Henry Pike, the member for Byron.
Thank you. And myself, Lisa Chester's the chair. And the first questions today will come from our deputy chair. So, Ms Mackenzie.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Now, can I ask, obviously we are acting in good faith with the terms of the proposed treaty. When do we expect Article 1.9 will be fulfilled, meaning deemed to have entered into force, assuming the processes from here proceed normally?
Thank you. Our intention is that the treaty enters into force by the time of the upcoming Pacific Islands Forum leaders meeting, once the current processes are concluded. As I mentioned, the treaty has been ratified by the Nauru Parliament as of February this year.
And sorry, I don't know when that forum is meeting. Can you tell me when that's meeting?
I don't have the exact dates in front of me, but I believe mid to late September.
Oh, good, so soon. All right. So a couple of questions. Obviously, all members of the committee would be familiar with the recent announcement of an agreement between Nauru and the China Rural Revitalisation and Development Corporation. So just curious if you could provide some background to that agreement, when you became aware of it, and were in fact you notified of it under the various provisions of the proposed treaty that would suggest such a notification may have been expected.
Thank you. Yes, we became aware of the announcement of what's termed an investment proposal from the country in question when it was released by press release on the Nauru government website. We noted language in the proposal that potentially triggered some elements of treaty provisions, and through the processes that we have established to monitor treaty adherence and compliance, we've reached out to Nauru counterparts to seek further details. We've done that personally myself on 2 occasions, and we've also had to post-engage extensively with counterparts in country. We have further details of the arrangement, but it does appear as though actual implementation of any further investment in Nauru is potentially some time off. So we have agreed to continue in discussions with Nauru and counterparts to see if treaty provisions are indeed triggered by the proposal.
So does that mean action was taken on the Nauruan side under Article 5, subsection 7? Or did you reach out post the release of the Nauruan government on the 11th of August?
We reached out directly after we saw the release, which is not uncommon. This was as I mentioned, a press release. We understand the proposal itself has not gone to the Nauru cabinet.
So there's been a signing, of this agreement between Nauru and the China Rural Revitalisation and Development Corporation, but it has not yet gone to their cabinet.
That's our understanding, and as I mentioned, it's an investment proposal that flags areas of possible collaboration in the future, and there is a proposal for some sort of visit in country to look at those options, but we understand that may take some time.
All right, so that's why you think that Article 5.7 wasn't triggered, which seems to impose a positive duty on Nauru to consult with Australia on any partnership that goes to critical infrastructure such as ports, aviation and energy infrastructure, mindful that phase 1 of the project proposal goes to renewable energy, the phosphate industry, marine fisheries and sea infrastructure.
That's right. As I mentioned, there's language in the press release and in the proposal itself. We understand that at least had us interested as to whether these areas potentially were caught under treaty provisions. As per our normal processes, we made inquiries, and as I've said, we understand actual action on this proposal is potentially some time off, and we've agreed with Nauru and counterparts that should activity occur in any of these areas in which treaty provisions would be triggered, we would manage that process through the mechanisms that we've established, particularly the joint committee that governs treaty implementation.
So am I meant to read this press release from the 11th of August as being a kind of good idea press release as opposed to what it seems to be, which is signed a phase 1 investment project proposal?
That's a question for Nauru. As I said, we were interested by the language in it, and as per our existing processes, made inquiries. We're satisfied that should any action materialise from this that triggers any treaty commitments, that Nauru will adhere to the requirements of the treaty in that regard.
Okay. What do we know about the China Rural Revitalisation and Development Corporation?
Not a great deal. There does not appear to be a large body of internet presence for the entity in China.
Have we made inquiries, both of our friends in Nauru and our friends in China?
Yes.
And we're still none the wiser for what it is?
As I said, we will seek further details, particularly if the mission that's referred to in the press release materialises and a team visits in country, then obviously we'll be engaged appropriately through that. Our post in Beijing has also made inquiries about the nature of the entity as well.
And so are we in any way confident that we have, under the various provisions of the proposed treaty, an ability to, how would I put it, oppose that agreement on the basis that it's inconsistent with ours, or does the CRRDC have to have a particular status for that provision to be triggered?
No, it doesn't have to have a particular status. The provisions of the treaty in this regard are broad and refer to any entity's involvement in those key sectors. So again, if we were to see proposals for material action in those sectors, then clearly we would examine those under the treaty requirements. And the short answer to your question is yes, we are confident that we would have the capacity to properly monitor and if necessary, oppose any activity in areas that were a cause for concern.
And you mentioned that there'd been 2 sets of discussions. Are they both in relation to this announcement on the 11th of August, or has there been an analogous proposal in some other area that I haven't been alerted to?
No, I've had 2 direct discussions that I've personally been involved in, and that's under the normal provisions for monitoring the implementation of the treaty. Our post through our High Commissioner, Matthew Barclay, has also had a number of discussions. I don't know the exact number, but I would imagine 2 to 3.
And have you had a explicit discussion about whether Article 5, I think it's 5, sorry, I have to keep turning back. Yes, 5.6 has been triggered, meaning there needed to be a discussion to reach a mutual agreement with Australia on any partnership on the matters highlighted there, some of which may well be captured by this proposal?
As I said, were substantive action to result from this, then yes, we are confident we would work through the regular implementation mechanisms for the treaty to assess whether we concurred with this activity proceeding. But as I said, nothing substantive has happened in country as of yet.
Have you seen the phase 1 investment project proposal?
No.
Have you asked for it?
We've expressed an interest, yes.
And has a specific ask been declined?
No.
All right. Fair enough for now.
I just wanted to see on this particular area if any other committee members had questions before we proceed to other topics on the treaty. No? Okay. Ms Brisky.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for those giving evidence today. Just wanted to go to a sort of broader question. How does the treaty contribute to our broader regional stability in the Pacific, and in what ways does it complement Australia's other partnerships in the region?
Thank you. I might make a few introductory comments and potentially pass to Mr Roach if he has anything to add. But as I mentioned my opening statement, a key provision of the treaty is for Australia and Nauru to mutually agree any engagement in Nauru's security sectors and key parts of critical infrastructure, as well as an agreement to consult on particular engagements by third parties or entities in other areas of Nauru's critical infrastructure. This is a key pillar of the Pacific Island Forum leaders who have endorsed Pacific security being led from within the Pacific. And these requirements under the treaty support and buttress that and reflect a shared outlook on this from Australia and Nauru.
Thank you very much. Look, I think in terms of Mr. Chatterjell's answers, I think he's captured effectively the policy motive of both Nauru and Australia, and that is to give life to what Pacific Island Forum leaders have been talking about for many years, Pacific-led security and Pacific-led solutions to security, and I think the treaty is a good representative of that.
Fantastic. And just as a follow-up, Chair, if that's okay, are there any early achievements or progress under the treaty that demonstrate how it's already supporting stability and collaboration in the Pacific alongside Australia's other partnerships?
I'm sorry, you just cut out there. Are you able to restate that?
Happy to. I was just asking whether there's any early achievements or progress under the proposed treaty that demonstrate how it's already supporting stability and collaboration in the Pacific alongside our other partnerships.
Thank you. As I mentioned, we've had now a number of joint committee meetings under the treaty that have looked at proposals or ideas being brought forward in order to trigger both a mutual agreement requirement or, in a number of cases, a consultation requirement. We believe that demonstrably Nauru's understanding of potential risks of some of these engagements have been raised. And just as an example, Nauru did approach us at one point seeking guidance or consultation on proposed aviation memorandum of understanding they're intending to enter into with another nation's national airline carrier. Our approach in that regard was to examine the MOU and provide advice on the issues that we thought Nauru should consider in terms of maximising the benefit for Nauru. So that, in a sense, is a regulatory and capacity uplift exercise for us in allowing Nauru to assess risks and make its own sovereign decisions in areas of sensitive infrastructure. I mentioned too, a key component of the treaty is the $40 million investment in Nauru's policing and security uplift, and there have been two missions in country to begin to design that investment. And we're confident that we will see Nauru's capacity to effectively manage security issues will be strengthened, including through the development and implementation of its national security strategy.
And if I may, Senator, the question you asked about the broader regional benefits, Pacific Island countries are very concerned about their economic security as well, and the symbol of, and with declining banking, correspondent banking linkages across the region, this is an issue of particular concern to the Pacific, and Nauru is not alone in facing challenges with banking, and for them to see the Commonwealth Bank open this month, I think is a very powerful symbol of Australia's practical support to the region.
Excellent. Well, that actually goes into my next question around submission received by the committee raises some concerns about the extensive support Australia is providing to Nauru's economic policies. Can you explain why it's necessary for Australia to be providing the support and how it will directly benefit the people of Nauru? It sort of expands on that response that you just gave them.
Thank you. Well, to begin, I think it's important to highlight how vulnerable Nauru is. It is highly vulnerable to climate impacts, a small population base, limited arable land, and by measures of what's known as multi-dimensional vulnerability. Nauru rates amongst the top 5 most vulnerable countries in the world. So underpinning the country's economic resilience and security is an overriding priority for the Nauruan government. That was the motivation for approaching Australia to see if we could expand our partnership in this area and allow Nauru to invest in its future going forward. And we've achieved a great deal, I would argue, in the 9 months since, including making payments of $40 million into Nauru's intergenerational trust fund. That is a highly effective and well-governed instrument that is saving money for Nauru's future and recently has grown quite substantially in the recent past and will invest and provide for ongoing fiscal support for Nauru going forward. In addition to that, as we make these investments, we are very conscious of working to ensure that Nauru's governance environment improves and that we have the most robust and strongest possible controls to ensure that funding that goes through the Nauruan system is effectively used for the benefit of the people of Nauru. To that end, our ongoing development assistance program with Nauru includes a major economic governance program that includes the placement of inline advisors in key economic ministries in order to support effective delivery on government priorities and sound public financial management. We make a parallel investment in Nauru's democratic governance, including in issues such as electoral reform, the rule of law and the like, delivered by the United Nations Development Programme. And we continue to apply, as we do through all of our development investments, the highest possible standards of transparency and accountability, including our own public reporting, which is available. So we think that we've made good progress in the first 9 months of implementation, and I think we are delivering on our commitment to increase Nauru's economic resilience. Mr. Cumston mentioned it before, but the announcement of CBA's presence is a game changer, really, for Nauru, that has been threatened with a withdrawal of banking services that would be catastrophic for the Nauruan economy, and to have CBA making that investment in Nauru's future is a great outcome for both Nauru and Australia, and reflects strong partnerships between ourselves and the Commonwealth Bank. So Senator Green, I know, was very pleased to be there to launch that service. Really was a key deliverable under the treaty. I might just check if Mr. Cumston wants to add.
Mr. Tattersall, I think you've summarised it very nicely, but just to highlight the issues that Nauru is now has moved the majority of its payments onto electronic payments, and the possibility of them being debanked and losing access to the international financial flows was severe enough when you consider remittance flows, the ability to pay for basic services, the ability to people to pay for education, primarily in Australia, but also on the island it would have been catastrophic because it would have affected the ability of the basic economy to function. So it was a very, very serious problem that the Nauru government asked us for help with, and we are delighted to have ended in the outcome that we are currently at.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's me, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, I'll go to the member for Bowman, who has a few questions.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Pike.
In relation, and I realise we have already touched on it, but just going back to this agreement that's been signed, the China Rural Revitalisation and Development Corporation agreement. I note in the treaty that it's not just that these sort of agreements need to be mutually, or obviously you're still investigating what exactly this document is that's been signed, and I note that the press release comes in with a photo of figures from both the Republic of Nauru and this corporation signing some sort of document. obviously there hasn't been any consultation at all proactively from Nauru with the department in relation to this. Has there been? But you mentioned earlier that there has been other mechanisms through which Nauru or other avenues by which Nauru have activated that section, was it Article 5, Section 8, where they've notified you they wanted to consult. How many times has that been activated? And it seems unusual then that we weren't consulted in relation to this.
Thank you. We have formally had joint committee meetings on 6 occasions. That's the formal mechanism for engaging on treaty implementation, including in relation to Article 5. I don't have the figures directly in front of me, but a number of those meetings have involved either seeking agreement in the case of some engagements, but also consultation, as I mentioned, for instance, on in relation to the aviation memorandum of understanding that was raised before. The agreed process by which Nauru comes to us on these proposals is when they have a decision of government that it is something that they wish to pursue, and that involves Nauru and Cabinet consideration. Then the proposal is brought to us and we trigger the relevant parts of the treaty to either consult or test whether it's something that we agree with. As I mentioned, from what we understand of the investment proposal, it is just that, an investment proposal at this time. It hasn't been formally considered by the Nauru and Cabinet at this point, and we're confident, as I mentioned previously, that were it to proceed and have the full endorsement of the Nauru and Cabinet, that we would be appropriately consulted at the right time.
It seems strange to me that something isn't officially policy of the Nauruan government when you've got the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade and his deputy in Beijing signing a document which, to us in our system probably, would indicate that's now the government's position.
I couldn't comment on the internal Nauruan government process in this regard, but what we did learn from this experience, I think, is that the systems that we've established to inquire work very well, and as I mentioned, we've got a good degree of confidence that were any activity in Nauru to materialise from this that would concern us, that we would be consulted at the appropriate time and be able to activate the relevant provisions of the treaty.
How long are you expecting until you're able to ascertain whether this is a real investment proposal?
I couldn't give
that should be subject to
a timeline on that. Nauru is entering into an election period now. One would anticipate that we won't see any further development of this until after that election, likely in November. But as I mentioned, we're confident that should the activities proceed and should they cover areas that we would have an interest in under the treaty, that we would be consulted and engaged at the right time.
I would have thought the right time would be before it's signed.
Well, as I mentioned, the process that we've agreed on over the course of the last 9 months with Nauru is that they will bring proposals to us for consideration once they have the full endorsement of the Nauru and Cabinet.
Right.
And we understand that was not the case.
So it has been flagged with you then?
I'm sorry?
Has it been flagged with you in any of those 6 occasions when the joint committees met?
This particular proposal?
Yes.
No, not in those formal joint committee meetings. We have had, as I mentioned, the informal consultation on what is effectively the press release, just to inquire as to whether this is something that triggers treaty requirements. And as I mentioned, we're confident that should it trigger treaty requirements in terms of any implementation or action in country, that will be consulted at that time.
Okay. It seems to me strange that, $1 billion goes a long way in Nauru. That would be, presumably would dwarf our level of investment that we make in all the different areas that you mentioned earlier about the support that we provide. It it seems to me strange that, A, it wasn't flagged by the government of Nauru, and I accept that that's not something that you can answer because obviously you can only be accountable for your own actions. Secondly, that it may take us some time to actually even ascertain whether this is an agreement that that meets the conditions within the treaty for us to have to have mutually agreed to it. I'm concerned. My question would be, what it would be the steps if we get to November and we get an indication that it is something we should have had a look at or should have had consulted, and then a decision is made to then consult on us. How long would you anticipate the process would be before we actually have a resolution here that is allows the Australian government to say this is consistent with the treaty or this is outside of the treaty? We're working with the Nauru government to do X, Y, and Z to make this consistent with the treaty, that we can mutually agree with it. I get the sense that this is going to take us a very long period of time.
That would be speculation on my part. I don't know exactly how long it might take. I think it does depend on both the Nauru election context, on if and when the proposed scoping mission, as I believe it's been described as in the press release, proceeds, and that would be an obvious time for us to take a look at what was developing and proposed. In terms of the processes by which we would formally consider it, either ourselves or Nauru has the ability to call for a joint committee meeting to directly consider that at any point. And Nauru would seek to do that should they get cabinet endorsement to proceed with a particular investment, and we would be consulted through that mechanism. The joint committee meeting has worked very smoothly to this point, and we're usually able to discharge issues within days or even hours on some occasion. It just requires senior officials to meet and for decisions to be considered and documented.
The one last question, if that's all right, Chair. What concerns me about that process is that if we end up in a situation where the Nauru government and the Nauru cabinet says, yes, we want to proceed, and may not necessarily be this agreement or this proposal, but something else. If we have to await a decision of the cabinet and it becomes officially their position that they want to do X, and the Australian government's position is we do not want them to do X, I would have hoped that this treaty would have resolved that before it got to that point, that from a government to government level, from Foreign Affairs Department level between the governments, these issues could be resolved before it becomes a clear split where we're effectively publicly vetoing something that the Nauruan government clearly wishes to pursue.
Look, I think that's the right characterisation, is that it is quite possible that if proposals were being developed that we had concerns about, we would be able to have preliminary discussions that resolve the issue rather than it being brought to a head for want of a better term. Equally, I do have sympathy with the Nauruan position that they get the full endorsement of cabinet before formally presenting proposals to us. As any government across the world operates, there are many ideas at train in the Nauruan system, and good governance would lend them to be fully considered by the cabinet before being put to us formally. But that's not to say that we wouldn't have the kind of informal conversations that you've been referring to in advance if we thought there were particular issues of concern.
Sorry if I could just pick up.
Of course.
Mr. Tattersall was finishing on, and I think it's important to recognise a treaty sits in a broader set of diplomatic engagement with the government of Nauru, with our High Commissioner and his team there. It is not necessarily a mechanistic approach about the way that the treaty operates. There are multiple points of influence and discussions. That's why we have a diplomatic mission in Nauru to be talking with ministers. Under the treaty, though, either side can ask for a joint committee meeting to be convened, and that needs to happen within 2 weeks. As Mr. Taswell said, we've got a really good pattern of consultation. We're starting to develop that those habits of coordination, Certainly, we don't need to wait for things to reach certain points before we can, for instance, ask for a joint committee meeting to talk through. And then outside of that joint committee process, there's diplomatic engagement, of course, as well.
Thank you.
I might add just briefly on this. This is still a new arrangement for both countries, and clearly it's required the Nauruan system to increase its own awareness of the provisions of the treaty and how they might be triggered moving forward. And it's understandable that takes some time, but those proposals or those processes are now quite well developed, and indeed under our ongoing development program in country, we're actually providing effectively capability uplift to support Nauru to coordinate across its own system to manage treaty issues, and that will include deployment of personnel to support that. The President Adiang has shown real leadership of this process by delegating treaty implementation and consultation with Australia to the Director General of his office. So we have very strong mechanisms, as Mr. Roach mentioned, for considering issues both formally and informally.
Ms. Lawrence, Member for Hasluck, has a few questions.
Lovely, thank you. I'd just like to focus around Article 4, around governance and transparency. So with respect to Nauru having to ensure integrity, transparency and accountability in its fiscal and financial management systems to prevent fraud, corruption and misconduct, we have received correspondence that suggests that there is misappropriation of funds, and the concern being that this is Australian taxpayer dollars that are going potentially to actions that aren't supported and aren't driven through the intention, and certainly not in terms of the tenor of this treaty. I'd just like to understand, what mechanisms you have available to assure yourself that there isn't misappropriation of funds, that there isn't fraud and corruption. What skills, knowledge, experience we're working to build the capacity and capability. I appreciate the treaty is very new. Things take time, relationships take time to develop, and trust as well. So just with the time is tight, but you've already had some big milestones achieved, particularly with the Commonwealth Bank going in. So if there are other milestones that you could perhaps point to bring assurance that this agreement is being honoured.
Thank you. Yes, Article 4 of the treaty is a key one from our regard, as it does pertain to the highest possible standards of governance and transparency, which is only just justified when we're making a very substantial investment of Australian resources. We take quite extensive steps in our cooperation with Nauru, both to ensure compliance with our own anti-corruption framework, but also to build capability in the Nauruan system, which does remain a small and low-capacity country. To that end, as I mentioned, we have quite an extensive economic governance program supported through our ongoing development program that supports a range of inline advisors that are there both to build capability in the Nauruan system around public financial management, delivery of services, applications of Nauru's regulatory frameworks, improvements in those regulatory frameworks and how they're applied. We also have ongoing investments in democratic governance, as I mentioned before, including on electoral issues, on rule of law, on ensuring effective community policing in Nauru, all of which contributes to a more improved governance environment. And then in all of our ongoing investments under our development program, we have very rigorous requirements around fraud and anti-corruption that are applied very carefully by our team. You mentioned investments that we've made under the treaty, and I said before, of the $100 million in budget support commitment that's included in the treaty, we've made payments of $40 million under that framework now. The mechanism for doing that very deliberately is the Nauru Intergenerational Trust Fund, and that is a fund that is managed by an oversight board that I sit on, along with counterparts from New Zealand, as well as President Adeyemi himself. It's a fund that's managed by a highly credible investment firm that's delivering really strong returns for the Nauruan budget. And indeed, the fund itself has a provision written into its founding document that there are no withdrawals from the fund for 2033. So that money is accumulating according to global financial markets. The fund itself is now, I believe, over $430 million in total, with the objective of reaching $1 billion by 2035, and they're therefore providing on an ongoing basis up to 20% of Nauru's ongoing budget. So that has extremely high standards of governance, and we were pleased to agree with Nauru that that's the best mechanism to deliver our budget support payments. I might just pass to Mr. Cumston, who's the expert on this.
Thank you, Mr. Tattersall. I would also make a point about the importance of good banking regulation, which is vital for the ongoing operations of Commonwealth Bank. That through our Attorney General's Department and also through AUSTRAC, we work closely with Nauru officials to uplift their financial oversight, and also we have a collaborative relationship in financial action task force assessments, which are very complex and difficult for small states, and it's something we work closely with all Pacific countries on their banking regulatory oversight and assessment. And I would just make one small correction, if I'm correct, Mr. Tattersall. It's $35 million that has been provided to the Nauru Trust Fund, and $5 million has been provided through bilateral aid, which is all the usual regulatory and fiduciary controls that are applied in our bilateral aid program have been applied through that $5 million. Thank you.
So do you feel there's sufficient mechanisms then to be able to do audits, to be able to see reports are published on where funds have been dispersed, that there is sufficient investigative arrangements happening within Nauru that you can provide that ongoing assurance, or is there a need within the treaty or a mechanism outside it to perhaps have a joint oversight body or something of that nature, just to provide that ongoing assurance of how funds are utilised?
Senator, to answer your question, there are regular independent audits that take place through auditors that we provide, and we think that's a vital accountability measure. But maybe I'll pass back to my colleague, Mr. Tattersall, for any broader comments about the trust fund.
Thank you. Again, this is critical because we're making substantial investments, and we want to ensure that they are delivered in ways that benefit the Nauruan people. We have, I guess, a framework of different kinds of investments and mechanisms for monitoring the efficacy and efficiency of the Nauruan system. A key one, as I've mentioned, is our broader economic governance investments that have a range of advisors working in inline positions in government agencies, including in the Treasury and elsewhere, to support Nauru to deliver the highest possible levels of public financial management. The budget support mechanism, as I mentioned, is the Nauru Intergenerational Trust Fund, in which there are funds are effectively accumulating out to 2033, and will then go in line into the Nauru government budget. That we will continue to facilitate uplift in their systems to ensure effective delivery of that. Mr. Cumston mentioned independent audits. The governing board of the Nauru Intergenerational Trust Fund, on which I sit, has just commissioned an independent audit of the governance of that mechanism that we will consider over the coming months as well. And as I said, we're very confident that that is an international standard mechanism that is delivering really high quality investment outcomes, but also building a fiscal resilience for Nauru's future, which is what this treaty and our broader partnership is all about.
And just lastly, is the financial support contingent on those anti-corruption measures, anti-fraud measures, those measures continuing to be met? Is it conditional?
Well, yes, I mean, if you read Article 4 of the treaty, there are requirements on Nauru's side to ensure integrity, transparency, accountability and the like.
So it's implied then?
Commitment from our side to invest to support them to do that. And if we were to make a determination that that commitment was not being met, obviously we would take that up through mechanisms under the treaty.
Thank you.
We still have a few members wanting to ask questions. So with the indulgence of our witnesses, you're happy for us to keep going? Originally we'd said sort of finish at 12, but I just know we've got a few more members wanting to ask questions. Great.
Chair, I will have to go at 12. Unfortunately, I just have a plane to catch.
No worries, but you're comfortable with the other witnesses?
Well, I'll let them speak for themselves.
Excellent, okay. No worries. Ms Penfolds, do you have any questions you indicated? Great, fantastic.
Thank you. Apologies if any of these questions were already answered earlier, but is this a unique treaty in the region in terms of the conditions it's placing on the deliberations of the Nauru government? Is this on?
No, go for it.
The treaty is unique in that it responds to the request that Nauru made to elevate our relationship. It responds to Nauru's desire to increase its fiscal and economic resilience, given how vulnerable the country is, both to climate impacts, economic impacts and fiscal challenges going forward. And it reflects, as I mentioned at the outset, a shared commitment from both Australia and Nauru that reflects the views of Pacific Island Forum leaders that security in the Pacific is best delivered from within the Pacific family. So yes, the treaty is unique. We don't have an agreement of the same nature with any other country.
Do you think that it's likely to trigger interest amongst other nations with similar multi-dimensional challenges in the region, given that it has a cost impact on the Australian taxpayer? Is it, in your view, possible that this may trigger interest elsewhere?
Well, you would have seen that over the last, recent years, the government has entered into a range of new and innovative and sometimes transformational arrangements with Pacific Island countries. The Nauru Australia Treaty is one example of that. The Falapelia Union with Tuvalu is another. The ministers were recently in Vanuatu with initially an agreement known as the Nakamal Agreement. We've had the arrangement of the PNG NRL proposal and various other initiatives. So the government is very much making clear that it's open to discussions with Pacific countries about how we can transform our relationships and meet their needs, as well as deal with the shared challenges that the region faces, including in the security sector, which is a priority for not just Australia, but as I mentioned, Pacific Island Forum leaders writ large. Mr Roach has been involved in a number of these arrangements, so may have more to add.
I think Mr Tazor's answer provides a very good response.
Sure. Just in relation to the costs associated with the agreement, in my EFO was 120.6 million over 4 years, then 42 million, 28, 29, 2 million. Are they just, wouldn't be just the costs associated with developing the treaty? Clearly that's a lot of money. Is that a general purpose grant to Nauru, or is it required to be used for specific purposes?
Thank you. So the provisions for delivery of assistance to Nauru under the treaty are for $100 million in direct budget support over 5 years. We've made payments of $40 million to this point. As I mentioned, that's delivered through the Nauru Intergeneration Trust Fund. There's also a provision for an investment of $40 million in uplifting Nauru's security and policing capability, and we've deployed missions in country to begin the design of that investment, and it is going to include supporting Nauru to develop and implement its first ever national security strategy, so that, again, we'll have clear provisions around what it is directed to and will be agreed between Australia and Nauru as that design is developed. The remainder of the costs that you mentioned are more around the implementation of the treaty from a departmental perspective, so resources to ensure that we're delivering in country and able to monitor effective implementation.
Right, there seems like a lot of money for implementation, but are you confident that the governance around the money provided to Nauru is strong enough to deal with any of the corruption issues? It's taxpayers' money, and we're accountable for making sure that it's spent wisely.
No, absolutely, and that's why Article 4 is such a prominent part of the treaty, is ensuring there's mutual accountability on both the Australian and Nauruan side to ensure the effective delivery of this assistance and indeed to uplift the broader governance environment in Nauru. We talked earlier about a range of the particular measures that we have in place to support Nauru's financial management systems and ensure accountability. In the broad, yes, I'm confident that we're doing a sound job monitoring those risks, and I go to the point that the budget support payment that's agreed to under the treaty is delivered into the Nauru Intergenerational Trust Fund. That's a highly effective and well-governed instrument. The security assistance, which is the other main element of treaty implementation, is currently being designed, and again, we're confident based on the systems we have in place that it will be effectively implemented and monitored.
And my final question, is there an equivalent treaties process in Nauru, and has it been through and approved by the government of Nauru?
Yes, the treaty has been ratified by the Nauruan Parliament in February of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we go to the member for Sturt, who has a few questions.
Thank you, Chair. Just the one from me, just in relation to Article 2. To the extent the obligations or plan are different from Australia's obligations under Article 4, if Australia does advocate in an international forum for Nauru to receive development assistance, what are the obligations or plans to make sure, noting potential reputational risk to Australia following an international forum advocacy, what are the plans to ensure the effective and efficient use of any resources allocated to Nauru by virtue of Australia's advocacy in an international forum?
Thank you. Yes, I've mentioned before the very substantial levels of support that we have for Nauru's sound public financial management and effective implementation of its budget priorities. That's a critical pillar of our development program and will continue to be so. Nauru is set to graduate from official development assistance early next year, and that potentially causes quite major financing constraints for the country in light of how reliant it is on ODA. We've previously advocated for the delay in Nauru's graduation, and we're also working on mechanisms to continue delivering development funding from Australia through non-ODA means going forward. That's under development. We have a strong track record of advocating for moderation in the way that the international development system approaches, in particular, Pacific Island countries. We've supported Cook Islands, for instance, continuing to provide non-ODA assistance after their graduation. Palau is also scheduled to graduate in coming years, and similarly we'll be advocating for a system to ensure that they can continue to access international funds. And then, as I mentioned, we're the major development partner in country. We make very substantial investments in uplifting Nauru's capability to manage funds from external sources, including through the deployment of the inline advisors that I mentioned previously, that both build capability but also monitor what's happening in the Nauru system and ensure effective implementation. So we think that the risks are there. They're there in every country, to be honest, but we believe we've got quite a robust set of mechanisms for ensuring effective implementation of our treaty commitments as well as ongoing development assistance.
And if I may, Senator, and I mentioned before our advocacy with Nauru in the Financial Action Task Force meetings and the Asia Pacific Group on Money Laundering, but both Mr Tattersall and I have been in many of these meetings, and it is common practice for many multilateral organisations are used to dealing with countries of more than 10 million people and struggle to deal with small Pacific Island states of under 100,000. So this is core business for us. But I would underline that at no stage do we ever ask anyone to undermine anything that would involve efficiency, effectiveness or accountability. This is just about being international organisations being cognisant of the challenges small island states suffer. It is not at all about lowering standards or asking for compromise. Thank you.
Okay, and to finish us off today, I have two questions, just very quickly. So the first is, Nauru is one of those countries that has appeared quite a lot in Australian media over time. Sort of two big legacy issues come to mind, the first being phosphorus mining and the second being offshore processing. So if you sort of ask Australians what do they know about Nauru, they're probably the two issues that come to mind. How does this new treaty deal with those legacy issues, and is there a role into the future in relation to those two issues specifically, or future issues that may occur in relation to those legacy issues?
Thank you. I mean, the short answer is that the treaty is separate from those issues and it is about deepening our partnership to build Nauru's economic resilience and you know the components of delivery on budget support and the security uplift in that regard. So the treaty is in that sense separate from those issues, but of course there is the totality of the bilateral relationship we have with Nauru is unavoidable, and you know there will continue to be a complex set of interactions between our governments on those issues going forward. But for the purposes of the treaty, our focus in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade is effective implementation and monitoring of this new arrangement we've entered into.
The only thing I would add to that is the economic resilience part of the treaty package was very much designed with both sides being aware of the history of Nauru's strong volatility in revenue flows, and that's why the trust fund design is so important, because it is giving Nauru some ability to level out its fiscal fluctuations.
And I would only add to that, we're talking here about a treaty that can provide a new foundation for the bilateral relationship. Yes, there have been the two issues that you mentioned, Chair, that dominate perceptions of Australians of Nauru, and I hope that with this treaty we will have a different foundation and a ballast to that relationship.
And my final question is in relation to some of the evidence that we've heard today and questions that committee members have asked. Like, we've heard that Nauru has already been through their treaties process to ratify this treaty in February. We've also heard that there's this proposal that's come forward from another country that's active in the region. How important is it that we proceed with this treaty? Like, how important is the timing of this treaty? It's the first that we've heard of the new Parliament, but can you give us some indication on timing?
Thank you, Chair. We consider that it's important that we move forward and ratify as quickly as possible. We're 9 months since the treaty itself was announced. Obviously, our own election cycle has meant that ratification has taken longer than might be expected. As you mentioned, Nauru has moved ahead and ratified on their side. As I mentioned, we would like to move forward with something ahead of the Pacific Island Forum leaders meeting next month. That would provide, for instance, an appropriate time to announce formal ratification and demonstrate the importance of the partnership to the broader region. The treaty itself is a landmark in the relationship. It has a number of unique and transformational elements for Nauru, and we see value in moving ahead.
Okay, my final question is, did you have anything further you wish to add, like a closing statement or any closing remarks?
Senator,
I'm going to have to run and catch a plane, I'm afraid, but I'll defer to my other colleagues.
Senator, there was an earlier question about the date of the Pacific Island Forum, and it's the 8th to the 12th of September.
Thank you. Okay, well, that gives us a deadline, doesn't it? Thank you for your attendance today. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence and will have the opportunity to request corrections to transcript errors. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, please forward to the Secretariat by close of business on the 27th of August 2025. And I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll just give a few minutes before we go into our private meeting.